All right, welcome everyone to Automox's 2024 State of ITOps webinar. We're going to review the highlights of our State of ITOps report for 2024 and bring you all some insights on how you can achieve new levels of efficiency and adaptability in your day-to-day. So just an overview on the agenda. We're going to do some introductions of our panel, give a little highlight of our survey, let you guys know what agility is in this context and how we define it. And then give you some insights on how you can help yourselves be more agile and achieve some efficiency in your IT operations. So there's myself, David Van Heerden, the product evangelist for Automox. I've been doing IT for just over 10 years now, across quite a range of industries and led a few teams through all highs and lows of IT. So I feel all of y'all's pain. I've been recently moved into this evangelist role because I like to talk. So I'm here with my boss, Jason Kikta, our fearless leader. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jason Kikta. I'm the CISO and Senior VP of Product here at Automox, and I've been in IT for 20, 30 years. uh, so long time, and been doing additional focus on security for the last decade or so. And I'm really excited. This is definitely the highlight of my year is this report coming out every year because it's always a surprise with a lot of interesting insights.
Yeah, for sure. And then we have the other person who tells me what to do every single day from a security and IT perspective, Tom.
Hey everyone, Tom Boyer here, and I'm the Director of Security and IT at Automox. I've been doing security probably the last, I don't know, almost 10 years, and before that, I was in IT. Um, I'm kind of the third wheel here at this webinar. You know, David and Jason maybe joined because of the beard, so yeah.
Well, thanks for joining. So, yeah, like we said, we're going to be reviewing our 2024 ITOps, State of ITOps report. We interviewed over 500 of our customers and outside professionals to gain their insights to how agile they felt and to give some additional meaning to that agility because many of us are familiar with the agile framework coming out of the DevOps world. If you're not familiar, we'll just walk you through what we mean by IT agility. And just to kind of lean on some outside voices, we have Gartner's quote listed here is that emerging management discipline with the ability to sense environmental change and respond efficiently and effectively to it. Efficient as the highlighted word. And we came to that same conclusion on our side as IT agility being that ability to quickly and efficiently adapt to changes in business environments, emerging technologies, and customer needs. Just kind of bringing that closer to our personal relationship to IT and knowing how we have to adapt to things closer to us within the business. But as highlighted here, the main word and the main thing that we're concerned with is the efficiency side. So on this panel today, we want to talk about achievable efficiency within IT ops, go over some of the surprises that came out of our report, and glean some insights from my friends here, Jason and Tom,
Yeah,
and
and I
myself,
think
because I got an opinion in too.
and I think one of the key things that we should recognize up front is that efficiency has really become the focus of IT over the last couple of decades. When I started a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away in the 90s, believe it or not, like adoption was the focus of IT because, literally convincing businesses, organizations, teams that yes, every person needs a computer. Hey, those computers should be networked. Hey, they should probably be networked to something other than each other. They should actually be on this internet thing that you're starting to hear about. That was the focus of IT, and it was, starting to bring in tools and not just purpose-built tools, but a lot of general purpose flexible tools, commodity tools. There was a time when all software was bespoke, and so getting to that right mix was the focus of IT for a very long time. And then once we reached high degree of adoption, then it became about efficiency. And efficiency really comes down to, how low can you get cost while still delivering, adequate, even hopefully good services to your users, and how well do you achieve that balance? That balance between price and performance is really what we define as efficiency in IT. And so this survey, it was fascinating to me, because when you look at the methodology behind it and who we interviewed, we had a broad cross section of folks. I mean, it's split about evenly between small businesses, medium businesses, and large enterprises, and the and even when you look at the types of professionals, there's sysadmins, IT engineers, help desk technicians, CIOs, IT directors, like you name it. And the answers were incredibly consistent, that it wasn't that the things that they struggle with, it wasn't really about how big your organization is, how dynamic your market segment is, or your industry vertical is, or how well resourced your team is. It was really about how well does that team function and perform within the larger organization, how well do their tools enable them to do what they need to do, and how much do your processes, internal business processes, and not just in the IT department, but within the business as a whole, do they act as a sail or are they an anchor? And I think this survey really, highlighted those distinctions that, too often we get in the mindset of, oh, efficiency means delivering at a lower price, so therefore this must be about money. This must be that, high finance teams or well resourced teams perform so much better than low resource ones. And so certainly it's an advantage, but no, it's actually about culture and tooling and processes.
Yeah, and I think another layer to that too, right, is the adoption is there, which brings complexity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where to understand all of these tools that all these different teams have adopted into their functions and their practices is a monumental task for IT to manage all of it, security to manage all of it. You have to understand it, and that's a monumental task at hand. And to your point of, this broad scope, it doesn't really matter what your size is as an organization. More than half of the people that we interviewed reported that they were not at a high level of agility, that they all struggled in their respective sizes. So even with massive amounts of resources thrown into the teams, these are common issues that we're all dealing with.
Absolutely. I mean, Tom, you and I were just discussing recently as well, too often what efficiency ends up meaning is that you have a team who's resourced to cover the day to day, but when you meet those major business events where you have to shift rapidly, whether it be a significant hardware refresh or replacing a major system that another department depends on, or changing the way in which you do integrations or workflows, like those can really set a team back and have significant, like, outsized impacts, even for a momentous event, right?
Right, 100%. And I I read a book recently, right, by Gene Kim, and he's kind of the godfather of books in the IT industry, right? The DevOps Handbook and all those books that we've all came to love over the last couple of years. But his newest book, Wiring the Winning Organization, is, I think, for me, the piece that has always been missing in our field, and not to make this whole thing about his book, right? But he took a step back in the industry and said, like, of those organizations that are successful, what are they actually doing to be successful, right? And his thing is three things, and I won't go into all the details. I'll let you save it. I'll let those that want to read it in the book. But to me, the one that really stands out is, as leaders, are we shaping the problems in our organization in a way that's easier for our ICs, our directs, to solve them? right? A lot of the times like you talked about, something big needs to change, right? We're shifting our market focus, we're bringing on new technology. That's a new learning opportunity, right? That's not a technical problem that we kind of have the capacity currently to solve, right? It's going to require large scale learning from the entire department, right? Because we don't have the routines built internally to really manage this. So how do we do that, right? And as leaders, it's more about shaping the problems in a way so it's easier for them to solve, or solving the problems so it's safer, right? We're not solving them in kind of performance, right? For example, onboarding, right? We're not trying to solve problems with onboarding during onboarding happening, right? When the people are coming in the organization, we take the time, we set the time aside, we force our organization to, reflect on what happened, and then we make those improvements in a safe place. So a lot of that builds efficiency in within your IT and in security as well. I think security needs to go through the same motions internally, because security has always, in my opinion, been this like we've been in this weird state the last 10 years where we're kind of stuck in like the the CISP mode. Um, but we need to be more, you know, agile. We need to be more efficient. We need to be more business driven and adapt to a lot of the challenge that the business is facing, right?
Yeah, and I mean, Tom, you're staying consistent to your predictions for 2024. Just a shameless plug for that blog post, and that IT and security folks getting closer to the business, right? And changing our
Yeah.
mindsets to lean into the business problems rather than resist and fight them, because that's really what that agility, nimbleness part is all right, we're all wrestling with this problem. How can we tackle it together through partnership, not just turning IT and security into a black box?
Yeah. And Jacob, to answer your question, it was Wiring the Winning Organization, and it's a Gene Kim book. It's on the IT Press. They're the publisher, so it just came out a couple months ago. I highly recommend anyone in IT and security to give it a read, because it's been, I would say, very impactful. And as a leader in the space, right? Oftentimes what I've seen is we all kind of get stuck in a day to day, and we don't do a lot of reflection on how to improve things for our team. So highly recommended. Yeah. And back to your point, David, around, aligning with the business. I think business to business sales, if you're in business to business sales, like security is the new thing. Third party risk is not going away. And, the better you can align there, the better you can make security, the better you can make, procurement within your organization, I think is such a strategic advantage, to sales. Having a security portal, being open, joining customer calls, talking to the customer, right? Like you got to get out of the um kind of the basement. I love being in the basement. I hate doing these things, but man, it goes a long way.
Yeah,
Getting out of the basement, I think also, getting away from absolutist mindsets of, for so long, too many people in security treated risk as this, they had this mindset of risk elimination, and not only is it never achievable, not realistic, but what you really need to do is be in the art of balancing risks, making informed risk decisions, developing and enforcing appropriate controls, and that's really the true art of good security. Just like in IT, adapting to a new business need, and still maintaining that cost efficiency while delivering good services. Like it's not an either or, and it never really was. And then there are some ways that you can still like really well do both, right? And so when you
Yeah.
start to peel back that onion and go, are our processes serving us well? Like is it really delivering what we think it is, or are we just having process for the appearance of process so that we can feel good about it? Have
I'm
we automated everything that we can, or are we Tom, I think you're just gonna have to type the book title, man. Um,
I think I can put it in chat, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, just say
yeah.
I'll
type
do that.
answer.
I'll just do it.
Are we automating everything that we can? Like computers, as old professor of mine used to say, this devil box. Like we invented this stupid thing and we taught sand to think, to help us out. And so if you're not automating those things that are repetitive, that need to be done at scale, then you're missing out because you're now forcing yourself to do a lot of touch labor and introduce human error into things that a computer actually does really well. And what you
Yeah.
want to save for your humans, your people who are, again, always your most precious resource, and free up their time to deal with the hard challenges or to knock off work a little bit early because they've been burning the candle at both ends and get some of that precious time back. Then you need to have them focused on, are they only dealing with the things that require human intuition, human understanding, human cognition, and there, you can do both of those things and still achieve these great outcomes. You just have to think a little bit more holistically and a little deeper about your problem set, and about, again, what tools do you have available, what processes do you have in place, how are you
Yeah.
managing and running it.
I'm extracting this as a blurb because I had much more time to ramble by myself in my podcast about this. But I love that, we made sand think, and these devil boxes, right? The way that I like to kind of contextualize it to those of the IT operators and those of us that have to make things work, and be more efficient is that, we took what people did in the physical world and made it the exact same thing in a digital world through digitization. So we had directories, files, and folders, or folders and files, if we think of it archival like that. And that was just a digitization of the physical act of sending someone to the warehouse to find the index, go and get the file and the folder out, and then bring that back to the conference room. Like, we just digitized the manual work with computers. We're still in that phase of automating that kind of
Yes.
stuff, to where now what you can do is use, Spotlight on Mac OS or the search bar on your Windows machine and say, I'm looking for this file, and boom, it surfaces the file to you. That's an automation that you're no longer going to file, folder, subfolder. Okay, I found it. Now we've automated and eliminated the entire manual process of searching for something and plucking it out, and just brought it to you by you simply asking. And I like to frame, these kinds of automation conversations with that context of, are you just digitizing manual work? Are you learning a process and turning it into a digital thing? And that's a part of the struggle, where automation could just eliminate that manual process altogether. You don't need to do that manual touch anymore on a computer screen, when you could just eliminate the process entirely with a new product or with a new kind of automation.
Absolutely. And I think we see a lot of that come out, or it got surfaced in the report when we look at the barriers that a lot of these people are facing. Because, I mean, lack of tool integration, 54% state that lack of tool integration is causing tool overload and complexity, right? That is a stark number to me. Because it's just, like the tool is there to help us, and if it's not truly there to help us, then what is it doing there? And you need your tooling. Again, humans have the intuition, humans have the judgment and the balance and the risk acceptance. So a human should be able to come up with a policy. And I'll use our example because it's one I'm most familiar with, right? But like in our example of our product, like the policies that you set are meant to be a digital expression of whatever your corporate policy is, whatever that business need is, that may change over time. And then you can express it through a policy of, I want to, have these sorts of configuration changes run or enforced or changed. I want to have patches applied on this cycle. You need to be able to just have the human say, this is what I need. This is what I want. Go make it happen, easily express it through a tool, and then have the confidence that the automation will carry it through and get it done.
Yeah, and kind of again ringing that same bell, because this is clearly a problem that a lot of smart people are still struggling with, right? And when we're talking about this tool overload and this complexity part, shadow IT was a hot buzzword for years as something we were all trying to deal with, right? And one of the ways of addressing that is to kind of embrace the monster, right? Shine the light on it and get to know it, and coax it out of the dark corner and make it your friend. And
Yeah.
one of the ways of approaching this complexity, right, is to again change that perspective on saying I don't necessarily need a tool to fit into the way that we're manually doing it. Maybe we rethink, okay, what is the outcome that we're trying to accomplish? And we change the how by means of a new tool, an innovative solution, automation that eliminates that entire complex chain of steps that we've fabricated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It, you want to go, Jason?
I was just gonna say he said shadow IT, so that made my eyes start twitching. And I grew up in an era where the way you found shadow IT was, you would literally walk around your office building and kind of glance at computer screens and just find a way to come into each office and strike up a conversation, just see what people are using and wait for something you didn't recognize to pop up. And that was how you found shadow IT. And you know, it's not necessary today because you have so many tools that can, there's tooling that can perform a complete software inventory on a box and deliver it to you. And if you have things on that list that you don't recognize, then you need to deal with it. And while I'm passionate about shadow IT and I get very spun up about it, my last resort is to blame the user, right? Like that is literally the last thing that I take away from it. I view it first and foremost as a failure of mine as an IT professional of, okay, am I not meeting a requirement that they have? Like, is there no tool? Or if I have a tool that will fulfill that requirement and will meet their need, did I do a good enough job advertising it? Did I make it easy enough for them to request it? Is there can the help desk get it installed? And if it's installed, will it get configured right? Will it get updated regularly? How do I ensure those things? And so I want to solve those things. And then as a very last resort, if they're just ignoring all of that, and then yes, then you can deal with the employee who just doesn't want to go with the approved solution. But the vast majority of the time, it's an IT shortcoming, and too often it's because you can't do things like just, hey, give me a software inventory of what I have running across my network. Can I see it? Do I know what's going on there? And why do they feel the need to do it, right? Like then you dig into the root causes. But just getting that list is too often like that in and of itself becomes a project, and it shouldn't be because it's so simple and easy to do
Yeah.
with the right tool.
Yeah.
This next one here, I think, was particularly surprising to all of us at Automox when it jumped out of the report, and we started scrolling into the survey to really try to understand it, on how 10% report that their endpoints are not fully automated in terms of how they're managed, and
And I should
digging
caveat that
deeper.
these are not necessarily Automox customers. This is a cross section of industry. But I mean
Yeah.
that blew my mind.
Yeah, and the
Um,
the main reason that they cited was security concerns. They're concerned that automating it is a risk, which we have to talk about that.
right. If they'd said, hey, if it had been a very literal interpretation of, you know, right, like my favorite joke about computers is that the advantage of computers is they do exactly what you tell them to. The disadvantage of computers is that they do exactly what you tell them to. Um, Things will invariably go wrong on any given system, right? It doesn't matter if the tool is working correctly and your policy is written appropriately. Like the operating system will break, the user will do something unexpected, power goes out, internet, like name your thing, it'll all go wrong. So you're always going to need a way to go and manually address, the onesie twosie handful of systems that just didn't comply for some reason. Like that's the native that's why we have IT engineers, that's why we have help desk technicians. Like they both fulfill a vital role, and they balance in and of themselves. But it wasn't that. It was that they viewed it as a security risk. And to me, that's astonishing because you would rather introduce human error and human unpredictability and human misunderstanding into processes that need to be done on a consistent regular basis instead of I'm going to automate this. I know what it looks like. I have an expected outcome, and I'm going to look for deviations from that outcome, because the heart of security is like, what do we do in security? Like when you get down to it, it's about anomaly detection. Can I
Right.
detect an anomaly? And then can I determine whether or not that anomaly was malicious? Tom, do you agree with this? Am I off base here?
No, I completely agree. And I think there's a little, I think sprinkled in is kind of like an old school versus new school mentality around
And a
security
little bit
and,
of superstition.
right, where, the industry, at least like the IT server side went through this market shift starting in 2009, like the DevOps movement, where we really shifted our focus from like servers being kind of pets. Like we would give it a cute name. Our server is
Yep.
Morpheus 57, right? He's been running for
Gandalf.
7 years, and that's awesome. And then we moved to this DevOps mentality of like they're no longer pets. They're cattle, right?
Right.
If the
It's an
cow's
it's an
injured, there's
alphanumeric
yeah,
phrase that is
who cares what it
auto-generated.
is? It just spins up, it gets its configuration, it does its work, and when it's done doing its work, it spins down or what have you, right? And if I need to make changes, I can delete it or turn it off, or if it gets sick, I can, take it out to pasture and it can live a very happy life out there somewhere. But it's not really my pet. I don't really have a lot of
Right.
feelings for it. And I think some of that needs to happen still on the endpoints where, in IT and especially in security, right? Like we have these endpoints and we treat them as pets, right? We want all of our little things on them. We want all of our little weird things that we download from the internet on them. We want them to look pretty. We want them to look nice, and that's all fun and those sorts of things. But it makes it incredibly difficult to automate, right? Like I can't just zero touch provision your laptop. It gets to you, you boot it up and it's got the things on it that you need to work. Because a lot of these customization, a lot of this, I guess coddling of the endpoint, right? It should be treated a little less like a pet and more like, you know, a cow, right? So I think some of that is blending into this report when I read it, right? That was what I was thinking through in that sense, right? But a lot of it is I guess, I think turf wars is another one too that, I
Yeah.
think about for security and IT where um there's, these things need to be updated no matter what, but we're not really thinking through the disruption of the business or the
Yeah,
disruption of the
I
end
like to add
user.
that color to it, right? Where I think the statement I would make is that IT people like to feel safe in their environment. In the area that they manage and they have control over, when there's a change in it, they want to know about that change in advance, understand how it's going to affect everything across. And automation is kind of it's letting something run free, and it feels emotionally less safe for just change to happen without
Yeah.
you being the one to click that button and make the thing happen. Which is, I think, another part of where this comes from is okay, this application just got automatically updated or automatically changed, and now I'm surprised because users are reporting a UI thing. My help desk is swarmed because they're mad that we that we changed something, and
Well,
I wasn't aware that that
well, what
update
was
was
what
gonna.
was for most IT folks who've been doing this a long time and are now, running IT departments, what was their first introduction to automation? For many of them, it was writing something in Power. It was group policy objects, right? It was run
Sure.
GPOs and push that thing out and cross your fingers and pray that, it's actually going to work this time.
Full
And
send
woo,
it.
right? And you're throwing hope down a well, and
Yeah.
it just that so that those scars are very real. They're still felt today, and so I think too often there's this perception that the state of the art hasn't advanced very much, when in reality it looks nothing like it used to, and it's wildly different. And so I think that they they have this perception that the that automation is unreliable and should therefore be minimized, when in reality modern automation is extremely reliable. And by automating to a high degree, you actually get more reliability. And again, is it going to solve all of your problems? Absolutely no, never. We're still talking about computers, but
Right.
it lets you focus on those anomalies. It lets you focus on those ones that aren't in compliance for some reason, and troubleshoot those. And that's just where we need to be in 2024 for IT. Third
Yeah.
party and software management was another one that kind of surprised me. 44% of employees are in charge of their own patching and software updates. That sounds terrible. That sounds terrible from a security point of view, but it also sounds terrible from an IT point of view, because I think, like, when I say security is the art of anomaly detection, I kind of think that IT, the service side of IT, is as well. Of, think about it, David, like when you have that help desk ticket come in and you're trying to figure out what this user's experiencing, the further they are deviated from the baseline that you expect of one of your corporate machines, the harder it is to troubleshoot, right? Like, we're
Right.
troubleshooting, trying to figure out, like, how many standard deviations off of my known good baseline are they? Like, what's really going on here? And if they're in charge of their own software updates, then like, who knows what version they're on? Like, it
Yeah,
seems to me
all
like that.
those remote sessions of going through menus and settings configurations as well, right? Not just the state of their machine, but
Yeah.
okay,
And I think it
yeah,
also overlooks that I'm trying to remember the statistic. It was like 80-90%. It was very high. But the overwhelming majority of patches are still functionality patches. And I think, like,
Right.
we got into this mindset of CVEs became important. People started looking at CVSS scores. It got a lot of press. There was a lot of push for it. But when you look at, your average operating system patch, even while there may be a CVSS score associated with it, yes, this fixes this vulnerability or these several vulnerabilities. There's a lot of functionality fixes in there too, and
Yeah.
you need to understand what those are doing. And sometimes those are not what you want. So even just saying, "Hey, we'll just put it on auto update, and we'll just let go of the steering wheel and hope for the best," like, you may actually be causing some issues, because that security, even if it has a security fix in it, that might be a security fix that doesn't matter, right? There are some security issues that, if there's no clear path to target, if exploitation is very rarefied air and it's very hard to achieve, and you're basically like, unless you get crossways with a high level intel agency, which, let's face it, like, the vast majority of people never have to deal with, there's no clear mechanism to exploit that vulnerability. And so if the functionality portion is going to actually degrade the user experience or cause, new bugs, you should have caught that, hopefully through testing and through a very managed cycle of, okay, we're going to push out this patch, or we're going to delay this patch because we actually like and introduce a new bug, and we're going to wait for that to get fixed. And we've decided to accept the security risk from this very minor CV that's included. And so this just blind acceptance of, we'll accept whoever's update cycle it is. It works probably fine when you have something like Chrome for many environments.
Right.
Um, but wow, you can really get into, and I won't say the vendors, but we've had some, I mean, because of where we are, we pay a lot of attention to patches coming out. And so, like, we catch those patches that just came out 20 minutes ago, and whoops, it's missing its digital signature, and the system sees it as malware, or, hey, that is
Right.
something really horrible. Roll that one back. So, like, I think people don't,
Yeah.
because they're not focused on it constantly all day, every day, like, they don't see that side of patching and understand that, like, patching is still, like, it is not always 100% net good, and you shouldn't always apply something the moment it comes out. Like there's a, again, like all things, there's a balance that needs to be achieved.
Yeah. And not to harp back on what I was saying earlier to kind of the server side of things, but when I think through like rolling out patches and applying large scale things like that, right? Like blue green strategies come to mind, right? I take a subset of my devices, I push the patch, we swarm down problems on that patch, right? We're doing it in a way that we can iterate on. It's mostly safe. We're not getting called at 3 a.m. by the CEO because there's something wrong with his laptop, right? And we solve all those challenges in a way that's easy, low pressure, and safe. And then, when we're comfortable, we can flip the switch and send everybody else over. And I think as practitioners, right, we got to start thinking like this, more iterative, slowing things down for the teams, making the problems easier to solve, taking some pressure off because, efficiency, we're not going to get the budget. Like we got to stop hoping on a budget because it's not going to come, right? We got to be more efficient. We got to think like, you know, more agile, those kind of things. So,
What do
Absolutely.
they say? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
yeah,
Yep. Slow,
exactly.
smooth, and
Yeah.
smooth as fast. And I think that's where, how does this, so, I think we've talked about, but like how do you make it achievable? And so,
Yeah,
you know, this I think really well sums it up of, you have to have buy-in, right? There's some degree of this that requires a cultural change, right? You can't just direct this from leadership on downwards and, you know, demand compliance and expect people to expect that change to occur. There's some level of convincing and buy-in that's needed to make sure that they embrace it and they understand that this is to everyone's advantage. And then it's going to take time. It's going to take coordination with, again, not building good coordination within your IT team, but also building good coordination with other departments. And that's where that team mindset comes into play of getting everybody to, you know, really, really get into that.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
then, Tom already covered it on the, the heavy investing, right? That budget, don't lean on it, right? But and then you're addressing that frustration part and the complexity, right? Boiling that stuff down and lowering that temperature so that your team feels safe and equipped to tackle these problems. In that larger view, we're also familiar with putting out the fires, and we feel like we're at an endless toil with all of it. And so it's about taking that step back and identifying those problems,
Yeah,
which
you know,
going to this path and journey on how to achieve this, right? It's hard to take these big concepts and say like just follow these steps and you'll get all the way there, right? But trying to kind of bring up those surface level talking points, hoping you can dig a little deeper on your own time. um, and to that first step, right, that first phase is identify these things. Identify what it is that your organization is doing, what are the goals and the outcomes that you're trying to accomplish that ultimately bring value, and what are the things that are taking value away, what are the time sinks, what is it that you're spending all this effort on that purchasing a tool would be better to do than putting a person against it.
yeah,
And
and I like that it mentions creating new KPIs right at the outset of, if you don't know your destination, then who knows where your journey will take you. And so, focusing it from the KPI level of like, this is what I want to achieve. This is that new outcome state that I want to be in, right at the outset, that's going to help you with every step along your journey.
yeah,
Um, and then you
100%
move into,
agree.
yeah, right. And then you move into integration and getting into tooling that works better together and taking a really critical eye to, yes, maybe this thing has been here for a while and we're all rather comfortable with it, but is it really treating us right? How many people have to work on this thing? And are they, does it take, weeks or months or years to build a new person to run this thing? And if so, is that really the agility that we want in this organization of Like, okay, great, but like what happens when one of those people leave the company? What happens if, they need to be pulled for another project, right? Do you have folks who, hey, maybe they have some slack time, but you can't pull them away because you can't possibly, shift
Yeah.
around talent in your organization because the tools are just too onerous for somebody who's not in it all day, every day. You know, finding that good integration of tooling that works well together and is easily adaptable for different members of your team for them to be able to figure out how to use it is really,
Yeah.
really critical.
And the one thing I wanted to call out in the phase two, because I put SEs are friends. What SEs are sales engineers, and I encourage everyone here, right? Not just with Automox, but yes, with Automox. Get out, get on, go shopping, go to the marketplaces, see what tools are out there, and go down the line to then talk to these sales engineers about your problems because they see it all. They see customer environments from all over the place. They've dealt with your problem maybe multiple times and have plenty of insights to share specific to your problem. And through that, you get to discover that there are tools and solutions and ways to do things that you and your team may never have thought about.
Well,
Yeah,
and I
agreed.
think too, they'll also they tend to know like a very good wait staff at a restaurant, right? They know what pairs well with that steak that you really want. And so like when you decide you want the steak, like they're going to tell you what wine pairs well. They'll tell you like they can even recommend desserts and appetizers. You know, Tom and I have had the experience where we've had, strong feelings about a particular portion of our security stack. Like the stuff that's adjacent to it, we didn't feel, we're a little agnostic about, but this thing needs replacement. And so when we're looking at sort of our top tier replacements, we would ask those SEs and say, hey, like what pairs well with your product? Like what works in harmony with your product? And so getting their perspective was valuable to us because that would help us kind of decide, are we going to keep the incumbent solution? Are we going to look at something else? And let's make sure we look at that thing because they said it works especially well. Because when you can achieve that integration, that's a significant amount of labor you can take off of your team. That's a significant amount of reliability and predictability that you can introduce in your environment because you've built an integrated tech stack that works very harmoniously. And too often that art is lost, and people tend to view them all as singular, discrete um, decisions and make
Yeah.
their decision based on price.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And, if you have a tool that's, you know, good for Google Cloud and you're an AWS shop, right? It might have all the bells and whistles and all the new technology and it might make a million promises, but at the end of the day, like now you have two things you have to worry about instead of one.
Right.
And, it causes immense pressure within your team and with obviously within your organization, because you're trying to force it, right? You really shouldn't be forcing it. You should look at your ecosystem and, do some soul searching. What am I actually trying to solve here? Is this
Yeah.
going to help my users at all? Is this going to make us more secure in the end? Right? Is this going to help educate our users on, threats and
And
attack
Tom, I
methods that
I
we're
want you to talk
susceptible
about this a
to?
bit because you're already touching on it, which is that phase four piece, right? On where we've established the KPIs in phase one, we've set the target and the goal, right? Value to end user, and then I know that you're particularly good at this, which is how do you brag about this? How do you communicate to the business what you just did and why it matters, right? Because there's
Yeah.
even just what you do behind the scenes that made things better for your team, but as we've talked about earlier, there's you have to partner with the rest of the business on making technology work better for them. So we have to brag about it, right? And what are some
Yeah.
insights that you have on how to do that well?
I mean, I'll tell you, if you're in security or IT and you're not talking about how you help close sales and those dollars that you're driving through the sales process, you are absolutely in the wrong and you need to do something about it today. Like that is my 100% strong opinion, right? Like business to business sales, we answer questionnaires, we get on customer calls, we make them aware of our internal security posture, right? You
Yeah,
need to follow that through. If they buy the software, that's you. That's your team. You helped with that sale and you need to be tracking that. And
yeah,
through that you can see like, wow, we're really selling a lot more lately, right? Why are we selling a lot more? Is there something I need to adjust for the team? Do I need to change my outward voice in the industry to be more strategic, right? Do we need to Are we seeing sled pressure? Should we do state ramp? Are we seeing federal pressure? Maybe it's time to start investing um, into FedRAMP. So
Yeah.
there's lots to be done there, right? Soul searching and send a
And
NPS
expanding,
score into your
yeah.
team to see how happy they are, right? Like those kind of KPIs are often overlooked and incredibly valued to help you tell that story when you need
Right.
to tell it.
And got to expand it past sales a bit too, right? In that it's about the customer as well, right? If you're in your business doesn't necessarily generate that kind of revenue, it's a service delivery kind of thing, where you expand it just outside of the sales scope. You expand it to, hey, we're bringing something that makes that customer experience better with us overall. Thinking hospitals and everything else, right? And how we can
Right.
help that experience and how they interact with our organization. And then lastly, can't spend too much time on this one, unfortunately, but there's the phase 5 of iterate, right?
Yeah.
Where don't overcommit to what you set up in phase 1. You put
Right.
set those targets, set those goals. That's a great North Star to have. But like Jason said, you're on that journey. You never know where it takes you, left and right, and being too stubborn on these goals that you made without the knowledge that you have through the process. It's important to take what it is that you've learned and reevaluate and not be too emotionally invested in
Yeah.
calling
This
your
is where you don't
shots.
let the perfect be the enemy of the good enough. And
Right.
my ability to predict the future, not so great, but my ability to iterate, very, very good. And right. And so that's my bid for success is I'm going to guess wrong, but I'm going to be able to rapidly refine my answer and get to where we need to be.
Yeah. And in terms of overall culture shift, you can go through this entire series of phases in the tiniest of things. It can
Yeah.
be the smallest adjustment on how you do automated responses in your help desk inbox, where you just say, we want to run through this whole thing and see if we can improve that process overall, and then brag about it. And then measure where that was even difficult to do, something totally within your control. You were able to enact the change, and where did you struggle to brag, where did you struggle to iterate, and start building those muscles so you can bring it to the bigger issues in your org. But I do got to push us on to the next thing here, where we're going to dive
We're
into
getting
the
yelled at.
phase.
Change the
Yeah,
slide,
we're going to
David.
dive into the phase 3, and talking about that automate phase, right? The scripting and the tooling, because Automox is here for you to help you throughout all of this. And there are areas where we are extremely strong, and I'm personally a huge
Got
fan
to
of
do the sales
worklets.
pitch, right?
I got to do it. Obligatory. That's why we're all here. And so, yeah, we worklets. I love more than anything here, because really you can't sell infinity, but I feel like there's just unlimited potential in what you can do with worklets. We have a fantastic discover.automox.com uh, page here on our site where you can get a walkthrough of what worklets are and sort of just see how they function without setting anything up in your environment. You can also set up a free trial for your org and really give it a spin on a demo on a VM of yours if you want, your little lab environment. But going through, you can check out our worklet catalog where we have, I think, our numbers now over 500 inside of our
Yep.
catalog. And throughout those categories, we're just going to go to a desired state configuration kind of worklet where you say, I want to set up a policy that makes sure that every Linux that we have in our environment is set up the way I need it to be with this firewall configuration. So you're targeting your Linux servers, specifically Ubuntu. You're going to say, all right, hit those. And I want to make sure that this configuration is validated and applied every single day of the week, every month of the year, because that firewall should never change. And so by that, any new one that's added into your environment that our Automox agent gets deployed on, it will make sure that that firewall configuration is in place.
And that's what we're talking about when we say that, it just if you're doing these things manually or ad hoc, then you're really doing it extremely inefficiently, and it's costing you far more than you probably realize because it really truly can be that simple.
Exactly. If your process is that IT or security admins and engineers need to review every new box put into deployment, this is something that can eliminate that entire process to say we know that they're going to be configured the way that we need them to be via this policy. All right, so we talked about a lot. I don't think we stayed perfectly on track
Do
through these
do we
headlines.
ever?
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
But yeah, just to give that summary, the message that we wanted to bring, because ultimately we want to help. We're passionate IT and security practitioners here. We've been doing this and we're going to keep doing this for a long time, and we just like to share our knowledge and expertise, and we absolutely want to hear from all of you as well. So think about your questions, send them up because we are going to take the last few minutes of this slot to talk about it. But I do want to, head over that dive in where you are along the path piece. I, for one, definitely overwhelm myself by looking at these kinds of frameworks and concepts and ideas and thinking, oh, I need to be an expert on this before I can actually start doing it. And the reality is that we're all figuring it out as we all go along. The problems that you're dealing with at your business, although similarly shared across the industry, are still dynamic and unique to the people within your org and everything else that's set up within your environment. So don't think that the answers are plainly written out there and you just need to discover them. You discover them by learning, diving in where you are, iterating on your plans, and figuring things out as you go along. Any other comments here on the wrap up?
I, for me, the part about it being a state of mind, like that's why I get like too many people focus on like, well, okay, precisely what should my process be? I don't care what the process is. What um, you know, the process itself is really, it's almost irrelevant. It's about that state of mind. It's about that culture setting because the optimum process for your organization is going to change. It's going to change over time. And so, but if you have that mindset, if you set that culture within your team of this is how we're going to operate, this is how we're going to behave, this is how we're going to respond, then you know the process becomes somewhat fungible and you'll be able to adapt to whatever those particular process needs are and their changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of piggyback a little bit on what Jason said around culture, right? And sometimes in the industry we say culture, but it's abstract. Like what is culture? What are we even talking about here, right? And when I hear culture, to me it's like my employees can be themselves on the team, right? They feel valued. They feel like they're a part of a fun group. They feel like they can contribute. They feel like what they're doing makes a difference to the bottom line, right? And it's up to us as leaders to tell that story to them, right? I want to see our onboarding improved, 60%. And they get it there and you tell that story all the way up the chain. Like, look, before we had our onboarding experience, it was a mess and my team made it so much better. And you tell that great story, right? And you also celebrate your failures. We shouldn't hide from our failures. We should talk about the hard things. If things are not working, if your team is overly toxic, you got to tell them stop. You got to have those hard discussions. You got to be open and transparent. And that's how you build that great culture, that high performing, great culture. Don't squash new ideas, right? For the longest time, I had when someone would bring me a problem, right? That it was always like, yes, but. And I think over the last few years, I've really been sticking to this different mindset of when somebody brings you a problem or they're trying something new, right? A lot of the times sometimes we're dismissive, especially in security, but really think what's right about this. That should be your first frame of thought.
Yeah.
They're bringing you something. What's correct about this? Don't be dismissive. Give a voice to those that might not necessarily have a voice. Your most junior engineers and IT people sometimes come up with the most creative and amazing solution to things that no one else on the team thought of, because sometimes our more senior, our more staff engineers kind of pigeonhole into what they know, and really focus heavily in there, and they don't spend a lot of time doing, reflecting on what they've done. So, focus on the people, and empower them to be successful.
Yeah, that's at the core of all of it, right? Is the people that do the work and the team that drives that change. Absolutely. So, addressing some of the common questions that we get, there's let's see, can you share how a highly agile org could keep up with tech advances more easily than a low agile org?
So there's a lot to unpack there, but I think
Yeah.
at a high level, it's, you know, conducting an analysis of that technology and understanding. And let's use large language models as an example, right? A lot of you know very enthusiastic thoughts out there in industry. A lot of people saying it's going to do this, but like, what when you really get down to it, like, what is it good at? What is it not good at? And so being able to analyze a technology like that and say, hey, this is very good as an assistive technology of, helping a human, either generate something based off of a plain language query, or giving them feedback of, hey, your thing went wrong and it works this way, and saying, and understanding that this is the use cases where it performs well. These other use cases current models do not perform well in. And
Mhm.
so determining that rapidly and correctly, and then figuring out, okay, now we're going to set policies and technical controls around, these are the places that can be used, these are the places that can't be used. Oh, by the way, our general counsel has concerns about privacy and stuff, so these are the only authorized ones, and we're going to block the others, and we're going to, but then we're also going to fight that shadow IT problem by making the authorized solution very easy for people to find and access and leverage. Like, that's how that high agility IT team, it's that cycle that lets them get to those, implement those tech advances so much faster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say, try to get it closer to like an assembly line, right? If you think about an assembly line, you think about a car rolling through, people know what they're there to do. They have the problems are very easy to solve for them, right? And try to get it away from like your crazy uncle's junkyard, and you're building a car, and you're like running out and grabbing tires from all these things, and there's an engine over here, you got to figure out how to get in here. Which a lot of us come from those organizations where it's just chaotic 24/7. Figure out how you can get your organization from that to, closer to an assembly line where the problems are easier to solve. You can do it in a way that's safer for your employees to make mistakes, and they feel okay with making mistakes. They won't feel kind of, oh no, I messed up. Now I'm fired. And, swarm down problems that exist, right?
I,
Yeah.
I got really excited about our other question that we had, and I want to make sure we have time for this. The Starting to see the value of integrations, and I'm starting along this path. Is there any advice? I feel very strongly about this. Too often people look at integrations like they're not Pokemon. You really don't got to catch them all.
Yeah.
And just because there's an integration doesn't mean it's going to deliver you value. And I was going round and round with an engineer the other day on a very similar topic where, it was, beep, beep, boop, boop. How do I, automate this and integrate this, and on it went. And I'm like, man, you could just type this in like 10 minutes. Like, I'll type it. Like, you just type it. Just type it out. Right. It was not something that happens every day. It was something that happens a couple times a quarter, and it's a few minutes of work, and it's extremely easy to, double check, or to proofread and weed out human error. So like, do you really need to go out of your way to get an integration to do that? If that's the case, no, right? But there are some things where an integration is going to save you a major time, and so that's where you want to focus your effort. So I want to get that one out there before we
Good
wrap up
squeeze.
because I was
Yeah.
excited. Yeah.
Gotta
So
squeeze in the
thank
last
you,
word,
thank you to everyone who stuck around to the last minute. We're going to send you via email a recording of this whole thing, also a copy of the state of ITOps report, We're also going to send you an interactive assessment to help you determine your own level of efficiency there and agility. And then we also are running a surprise promo where anyone who attends a demo out of this will receive a Star Wars drink set. I've seen it at our sales booths. The little
What?
I
mug
still want to
has
get
the
that thing.
Baby Yoda
Still want
ears
that
on
thing.
it.
I don't
It's
get one.
fantastic.
I don't have one, man.
Yeah. So thank you
Unbelievable.
all. Have a good one. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Take care.